All right. Have these changes been good? Well, let's look at a variety of data. Most of this will come from our world in data, one of my favorite websites. But let's take a look. So first of all, what is the correlation between GDP per capita and life satisfaction or happiness? So first of all, just again, GDP per capita is essentially, you want to just think of it as income per capita. On average, how much money does each person make? Something just fell over behind me. Do not be alarmed. Everything is okay. All right. So if you look at this, so on the y-axis here, we have the share reporting to be dissatisfied with the standard of living. Again, dissatisfied with their circumstances. You kind of want to think about like that. And on the x-axis, we have GDP per capita, income per person. And so in general, as countries get richer, the people are more satisfied with their standard of living. It's roughly a linear relationship. So again, as the world's gotten richer, that's what's happened over the past 200 years. It's reasonable to conclude that people have become more satisfied with their standard of living. And there's actually, although I don't have it here, there's actually a correlation between happiness and GDP per capita as well. Okay, so people are becoming more satisfied as that GDP has skyrocketed since 1800. What about poverty? Poverty has plummeted. A couple different ways to measure this, but in general, however you want to measure it, it has plummeted, particularly in the back half of the 20th century. This is another way to look at this. Is my favorite graph of all time. Most everybody lived in extreme poverty in 1820. Okay, what we define as extreme poverty. People are, essentially barely getting by. You want to think about what was the average person's life back in 1820. Okay, let's go to the U.S. People are living on like small scale farms in the north. That's a rough life. You can go and like look at what those cabins look like. It's not pleasant. You're basically barely growing enough to feed your family. That's if you're lucky. If you're in the South, I mean, life was kind of cushy if you were a slave owner. Of course, life was awful if you were a slave. Um, but in general, it's a hard life for the majority of people. And even for the rich, there's no modern medicine. And the forms of entertainment are very limited. You got some books that are generally pretty boring. You don't have the quality of music. You don't have the quality of entertainment that we have in the present. And also, most people couldn't even read. So there you go. So this life, the peasant life, the nomadic life, wherever you are in the world, for most people, you're living in basically poverty. There's a small sliver here who, are living in not extreme poverty. When we go to the present, even though the population has exploded, we go from 1 billion to 7 billion, there's actually less people living in absolute terms, living in extreme poverty. And there's all these people who are not living in extreme poverty. So this is a massive positive change that really only happened in 200 years. Really, we've only escaped poverty in the past 200 years. Okay, this is another way of looking at extreme poverty in the rich countries. It's really dropped significantly. Um, Life expectancy, another way to think about this is, how are people living longer? Like, that's what we really care about. And yes, they are. Life expectancy has gone up. Although this is actually, for the first time in history, it's gone down in the US for the past 4 or 5 years. We could talk about that later. But in general, life expectancies have increased. Violence. Violence has gone down. This is one way of looking at it. You could look at it as crime too. Violent crime has also dropped. Number of democracies, that has increased as well. So we're getting more democracies, less autocracies. So any of these measures you want to look at, things are looking better. So you want to look at wealth, poverty, democracy, violence, that all these indicators are getting better. Education rates are skyrocketing. Make this small. Education rates are skyrocketing. Literacy, as I mentioned, literacy rates are skyrocketing. We go back here, nobody could read. Nobody could read here. You're worried about all these like dumb people on Facebook doing dumb stuff. Well, at least they can read. back in the 1800, the vast majority of the population couldn't even read. So it's progress. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect. It's not even close to perfect. But the point is, the world changed a lot from 1800 to now. The world transformed with the Industrial Revolution. Economic growth for the first time was realized. Sustained economic growth. What is this? This is innovation. We have sustained innovation. Invention on top of invention. Was this good? By any metric you want to look at, it's good. It has led to human flourishing, humans living longer at a higher standard of living on average. That's what has been the result of all this economic growth. So, yes, I am saying it's good. Let's jump over to here. See if I can make myself smaller. Maybe I'm just going to disappear. See ya. Okay. And so, what this is, famous graph. So, what this is, you can actually just see the history of the world of the past 200 years in this graph. So this is going to be the relationship between income per capita, basically, on the x-axis, and life expectancy on the y-axis. So you can see, again, you can see that positive relationship. Richer countries over here, each circle is a country. So here's the US. As they're richer, their life expectancy is higher. So there's Thailand over here, say, poorest country, Mozambique, actually, poorest country here, DRC, no, Central African Republic. Okay. And so we can kind of roll this back. Let me unselect these. Okay. Roll this back. So again, each one is a country. The size. By the way, we can see a little bit of the relationship back in time here is still positive, that your richer countries back in 1800, the UK and Netherlands, have the highest life expectancies. Although those life expectancies back then are quite low, 38.6, 39.9. I'm coming up on the average life expectancy in the Netherlands. And so you can see that relationship, and then we can see, we're going to push play, and we'll see how this evolves over time as we're going to see the countries all get richer and the life expectancies shoot up. So this is basically this industrial revolution. We're going to see the industrial revolution play out around the world in real time, not in real time, in a very fast time right in front of us. So you can see these yellow dots, these Western European countries, they're starting to get rich. Here's the US also starting to get rich, and the life expectancy is going up as they get rich. There was the pandemic, the first pandemic, the 1991. Here's come World War II, going to mess things up for a bit. All right, and here we get the 20th century. China's all over the place. They just had a great famine, but China's going to really come on strong here in the back half of the 20th century. They're going to get richer, and people are going to start living long. Look at it go, look at it go, look at it go. All right, there it was, the history of the world in, I don't know how long that was, a few minutes. Okay, let me find my slides here. There we go. All right, now you're probably saying, whoa, 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 what about inequality? What about global warming? Okay, haven't forgot about those. In general, this economic growth has been positive for humankind. Two concerns that you're probably thinking about, we will address at the end of class. Not the end of this class, but the end of the semester. Inequality has risen in some developed countries, these ones in particular, although it should be noted that it's not risen everywhere, and it's actually fallen in many places, and it's actually fallen globally. If you look at global inequality, that has actually gone down, but it has risen in a few countries. We will talk about that in depth at the end. And of course, we should be concerned about global warming, which is also a phenomenon that may end all of this growth that has happened over the past so many years. Okay, but we're going to look at those at the end of the course. Okay, so back to our discussion. If I had a time machine, where would you go live? The answer to this question is now. Now is the best time. I mean, it might not seem like it, not in 2020, maybe 2014. But in general, closer to the present is better than further back, even if you could go in the 10% of the richest people. You have to think, back in the early 20th century, the richest people, the JP Morgans, those type of people, they died of like the common cold. I think it was Rockefeller who died of just like a regular respiratory illness. And also, come on, you don't have anesthesia. So whatever thing you need to get done, no anesthesia. So even if you could be the 10% of the richest people, it's not going to be pleasant. You really want to live now, all right? Maybe not right now, as I said, but closer to the present, things have vastly improved. So we look at this. You look at this life. Oh, look at that beautiful peasant life that they used to live back in the medieval times. Well, this kid's probably going to die of smallpox. she's probably going to die in childbirth, high rates of maternal mortality, high rates of disease. So not so idyllic. These people, oh, look at the 1970s, so much fun. They don't even know cocaine's bad for you. So who knows? They probably both end up with a crippling addiction. Here we go, 1920s. Looks like fun. Well, guess what? There's these things called marriage bars. Once, if she's working, if she's in the workforce, if she gets married, she has to leave the workforce. The rights of women severely limited back in the 1920s. So again, are things perfect now? No, of course not. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm just saying that we had economic explosion from 1800 to the present. In general, this has been a net positive for humankind. It has increased human flourishing over the 200 years that we have unleashed this economic growth. And so therefore, it is advantageous, or it is incumbent upon us, or it's interesting to study this economic growth, which is what this class is about. What happened? What changed in the 1800 that set off that growth, that led to all this flourishing? Why has that experience been different around the world? That's what this class is all about. Hopefully, you are excited to learn it virtually, over the screen interface. But that's what it's about. Still more lectures this week, so keep on keeping on.